in the hell was that all about? I don't know, BT, if I have seen an uglier game from one team than what we saw last night, especially with the expectations, especially after the start of that game. Giants going right down the field, and then they go back. Like, settling for a field goal there on the opening drive would have been bad. Having a field goal blocked and then have it returned for a touchdown was a knife to the heart, and it just kept getting worse. The one thing that I will say, though, as ugly as it was, and we'll break it down throughout the course of the show, 40-0. I mean, that's as bad as it gets. I said I wouldn't overreact on Friday when I picked the Giants to win. I'm not going to It was ugly. I'm not going to overreact. I still think the Giants will be okay.
Okay. I think that's a fair way to look at it. That doesn't work for me. The Giants are not particularly talented at all. I mean, they're just not. And I do agree with elements of what Sal said. Like week one, yeah. I mean, even the Cardinals put up a fight yesterday. You know what I mean? So we've seen a lot of wacky things transpire in week one. We tend to overreact. I get that. And I'm really not overreacting to last night. But you look at, and just contrast it to the Jets for a moment. Everything this summer was about Rodgers, right? Okay, and the Jets defense, players, talent, tangible players, right? Everything about the Giants, and it's not a bad thing until it shows up on film, coaching. When the nation piped in about the Giants this year, it was they are incredibly well coached, which is true. But that's also code for massive disparity in talent from the teams that you are chasing. Last year, in the divisional round, they lost 38-7. Last night, they lost 40-0. The last two games the Giants have played, they've been outscored aggregately 78-7. Both teams are in their division. Their offensive line is atrocious. I get it. I get it. I don't think they're good at all. I mean, I picked Dallas with no flinching.
Right.
I pointed last year to a lot of the circumstances of last year.
No, you picked Dallas to win, FYI. You did not pick them in your perfect parlay as one of the teams with the spreads, just for the record.
No, understood. But I did. That's true.
Well, I want to make sure you're not taking any bows here just yet, BT.
No, honestly, this is not.
I took it on the chin last night. More ways than one, by the way. I put my money where my mouth was.
I hear you.
And the one thing that I said coming in, like, that game to me, we didn't say must win, but it was important to show that the disparity was close.
Yes.
If anything, it looked wider.
Yes.
That's my problem with it. However, there's a difference between saying, okay, I was dead wrong about the Giants closing the gap with the Cowboys and the Eagles and being a legit contender in the NFC. I admit I was wrong on that even after 1 week. However, I'm not giving up on Dable, Jones, the season just yet. I still think this team will be a playoff team. It's 1 week.
Yeah.
You disagree with that?
I don't think they'll be a playoff team. And I didn't feel very good about them coming into the season. And but listen, this is not about, come on, it's 1 week. I mean, taking bows. It's not about making proper picks. Who cares? I mean, at the end of that, that's just ancillary stuff to what we do.
It is nice to win, though, isn't it?
That's true. That is true. If you're gonna say something, may as well be right, you know. But even you go back, I referenced the divisional round with the Eagles last year. It was the varsity versus the JV. Last night was alarmingly ugly. And you even go back to that Week 14 matchup with Philly. Now, again, it was ugly. It was 48-22. It was even uglier than that because they scored a touchdown, cosmetic touchdown, with 39 seconds left. And when it was 48-14, the Giants have been shellacked by good teams here. Minnesota was not a good team last year. That doesn't mean that you don't give them props for the road playoff win. You do. But this is, for me, about amplifying the coaching job that Daboll did a year ago and really just pointing to the stark difference in rosters. If this is interpreted as hate or shade, or it's not. It's the reality of it. For the Giants to win this year, they're going to have to beat every bad team, and there's not many of them, on their schedule. They're going to have to get very lucky, and at that point, to me, it's still 50-50 crapshoot. The Niners, did you see the Niners dismantle the Steelers in Pittsburgh? Mm-hmm. I mean, we know about Dallas. We know about Philly. I mean,
well,
Giants have some issues. Giants have issues.
Right, they didn't close the gap on the top teams. Okay, that was evident. Look, you can't have a performance like that 1 week or not. You cannot. I mean, they got embarrassed, 40-0. That is an embarrassing
joke
at home. Think of all the buildup. The blew out. Fans are excited. They were led like lambs being sled to a slaughter. Watching Giant fans go into MetLife Stadium Sunday Night Football, watching the Cowboys just destroy them every which way. To me, though, that is a different conversation. Now, that is part of the conversation. They did not close the gap. That was obvious, and I don't think there's any Giant fan right now that would say that they have confidence the Giants could win the division or be a legit contender in the NFC. Certainly not after we saw last night. But there's a difference between that and saying that this team can still be a playoff team. I believe in Dable. I believe the Giants can still get back on track with the weapons that they brought in. They will be much better moving forward. They will be a good football team. There's a difference between that and then what you're saying now.
Yeah. Well, by the way, I believe in Dable. I mean, I think they've got a terrific coach, and I believe in Shane. When you can't give your quarterback a second to process what's in front of him, you're not winning. And Evan Neal, big problem. Andrew Thomas, stud, he's hurt. He went for an MRI on his hamstring. I mean, you sent this, throwing 5 hoppers back on field goal attempts. Your special teams unit looked atrocious. And really, I understand the rain and the desire to protect Daniel Jones, but how many designed runs are you going to call? I mean, it felt like this is going to sound unnecessarily harsh. It's not my intention, but 40-0 is 40-0. And last night looked like that powerhouse high school team that is playing against a team that they are so much better than, and the team that is the inferior team knows it, and they're just trying to get out of there without getting further embarrassed, hurt, and just try to see another week. This was a complete ass-kicking on every level.
Oh, there's no way to dispute that. I mean, it was an ass-kicking of epic proportions.
But I don't think it's an anomaly is my point. That's where you and I disagree.
Correct.
Every time they play the Eagles in Dallas, they get rolled.
Understood. I mean, I'm not going to go that far yet, but the disparity was clear last night. I still think the Giants are a playoff team.
Wow.
Now look at the NFC. How many wins do you think the Giants are going to have?
I think they're going to be in that 5-6 range. And I kind of thought that coming in. Now, listen, I thought Dallas would win. I thought the Giants would put up a fight.
Right.
And I do think
that was non-competitive last night.
Oh, God. Listen, to be clear, this is an outlier, I think, in terms of being destroyed. I think they piece it together. I think they lick their wounds. I think a proud Giant team shows up and scratches one out against a pretty pitiful Cardinals team who probably played above their heads yesterday. But listen, you got to play in successive weeks. Well, you've got at the Niners, okay? Then you got Seattle. Seattle didn't look that good yesterday, but they still beat you last year. At Miami, at Buffalo. And you got to play the Jets. Where are these wins?
Well, now maybe
you
know why.
Go to Dallas.
Now you know why Vegas had that win total, what it was for the Giants. I think it's easy. Now, look, I was as upset as anybody last night watching that. It ruined nearly a perfect Sunday for me. And it wasn't even a game. I mean, that game was over. I legit went to bed in the third quarter, and I could have went earlier. I mean, we knew that game was over early on. I'm not going to overreact. I said I wouldn't do it. We talked about this. The NFL overall, a lot of sloppy football being played yesterday. Week 1 is kind of like an extension of the preseason.
Yep.
Teams getting a feel for what they are, trying to, tighten things up quite a bit over the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to throw that lone performance out as an aberration. Now, I did learn that the Cowboys are on another level.
Ooh.
Eagles, I believe, will be on another level. Giants have a ways to go. But I still believe in this team. I still think they can. I'm not ready to throw in the towel just yet after one game as ugly as it was.
Well, that's why you don't throw in the towel. That's why they'll get in there and Dable will crack the whip all week and they will devour the film. And because he's brilliant and because he's a great asset to this franchise, he will put them in a position to squeeze out a week 2 win. But, there's just the gap in talent is alarming. And I'm not surprised. I mean, when you make that, listen, I said last week that I thought that the 2023 Giants would unfortunately resemble the 2023 Mets. You remember when I said this? Coming off a real spike, almost unexpectedly, galvanized the fans that were down for a while. And you appreciate that as a fan. But I think it also unfairly lifted heights. This Giants team, at best, is average.
Brandon Tierney, Sal Licata on the Fan. Our friends at Town Fair Tire remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Pete is calling from Seaford. What's up, Pete?
Hey guys, good morning.
What's happening, Petey?
So happy to be done talking about baseball now that football's back. Just a relief. Not a Giants fan, but not a hater either. It's just too many guys on this team are expected to play kind of above their paychecks. Daniel Jones had to run the ball way too much last night. Part of that was he was running for his life. I'm looking at the stats right now. Evan Neal was 59th out of 60 in qualifying tackles in week 1.
I saw that.
Lukowski was 56th out of 58th in guards. I mean, but for how many seasons do you have to talk about the Giants' offensive line? I mean, basically, even going back to Eli,
This is not about the offensive line. This is not about the offensive line.
He ran, I don't know how many of the runs were designed versus how many of the runs were improv. He ran the ball almost as many times as Saquon did last night, Daniel Jones did. And I've always thought, and again, I'm a Jets fan, but I'm not a hater, but I look at Daniel Jones, and I see a little bit of that almost Tony Romo-esque, like Murphy's Law. If it's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong. He's like the king of the 12-play, 10-minute drive that ends in a blocked field goal.
Listen, that's why he's not a top quarterback.
Right, but you know what? A bad day for quarterbacks on big contracts. I mean, I think you're going to get a lot of Giants fans equivocating today. But I would be nervous. And you know what? It's Daboll's job to make sure this team does not look past an Arizona Cardinals team that is projected to win 3 games or less this season.
That's obvious, Pete, and thank you for the call. They lose week 2 to Arizona. Their season is over.
No.
You cannot lose that game now. Now it is an actual must-win for them.
Yeah, rather than a perceptual one like we were talking about last week with Dallas to kind of, show them that they're not going to be you're not going to be pushed around anymore.
Well, they needed to win a division game. They're at home, close the gap. It got further. They were non-competitive. After an opening drive that was encouraging, to say the least, until the offensive. You get the holding, you go backwards. Then you get the bad snap, you go backwards. Then you get the field goal attempt. Like, kicking a field goal there would have made me angry. I was like, how could this drive end in anything other than a touchdown?
Yep.
Then the field goal gets blocked, which would have been awful, and then it's returned for a touchdown. Like, that is unacceptably bad. And then things continued to get worse for the Giants there on out. I think that's an aberration of the game. I'm not going to go nuts about all this, the offensive line and Jones can't play and Dable can't coach.
All right, I got a question for you, Sal. What's the ultimate strength of the New York Giants besides coaching?
Well, I mean, I think they could run the football. I think with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, they got Waller now with a playmaker. They're going to be okay offensively. Wink Martindale, going to make the most of that defense. I know they got rookie corners, but I think they'll be okay. It's one game.
Yeah.
Look around the league. A lot of teams sucked yesterday.
I agree. That's why I say what I'm saying. And if you disagree with that, that's fine. I respect it. You're going to push back. That's all good. It's what we're here for. But to me, my encapsulation of last night is not just about last night. It has to incorporate last season. They won one. Let me just lay that out. I got to lay this out, all right? Because I do think, not all, because Giant fans are as smart as any fan base in the country. Some Giant fans have been on Planet Delusion for a while. One division win last year. One division win. Minus 6-point differential. The playoff game, you lost 38-7. Last night, you lose 40-0. I mean, you could tell me week 1, rusty, rainy, whatever. The signs are here. Now it's going to get better because it can't get worse.
But what makes you say 5-6 win team, though? Like, that's bad.
But they win 9 last year.
Right.
And I think...
How do they get worse?
Well, first of all, if Andrew Thomas is hurt, he went for an MRI.
Right.
That's one issue that is very problematic. I also think that the turnover margin... And listen, usually when you have a bad team, Parcells was great at this, obviously Belichick, you come in... And the quickest way to clean up a mess is to protect the football and to clean up the penalties. And Daboll did that. They had the graphic on last night.
Right.
Remember all the loose balls?
Yeah, sweeping up.
Yeah, sweeping up. And then they had the 6 by Daniel Jones last year. He cleaned it up. Daboll was responsible for it. That's the quickest way to go from a doormat to competitive and respectable. And they did. But there's no guarantee that happens again. And last night, obviously, that's one game, but the turnover margin, not good. So when I say that it was a little circumstantial last year, all right, they beat some teams that we thought were going to be better than in actuality they were, like Tennessee and others. That's number one. And they had I think they were plus 13, whatever they were, a very high plus-minus turnover percentage. So a lot of things went favorably, and they played well in certain spots. I'm not trying to dilute that, but, look at the Giants roster. The offensive line stinks. It stinks.
See, I mean, it had an awful performance. I'm not ready to go there just yet. I can't imagine the Giants being that bad.
It stinks.
Corey is calling from Manalapan, New Jersey. What's up, Corey?
Hey, bub.
Corey?
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Let's go, bud. What's happening? How are you?
I got to tell you something. I'm a big Giant fan, and I turned to my wife after the block kick and run back. I said, here we go again. And I looked at and then I watched the game and tried to be, what's the word I want to use?
Objective?
I try to be
positive?
objective.
Optimistic?
Perfect. I wasn't positive because I kept watching and seeing what's going on. But if you looked, honestly, and I've got to be honest, the Cowboys, the Giant offensive lineman was so far behind the Cowboys that I don't even think they had a chance to protect Daniel Jones. So, I mean, first I wanted to blame Jones, then I wanted to blame Dabo. I don't know who to blame.
Well, everybody gets blamed for last night, and thanks for the call, Corey. That's on everybody. That is not their offensive line isn't up to snuff, so that's why they lost that game. That was an ass-kicking every which way. Everybody deserves blame for that one.
I agree, but listen, I'm putting a lot more emphasis on that offensive line. If you can't protect your quarterback, you everything else unravels and devolves to the point of embarrassment. I mean, think about the way it went sideways. First with the 5-hop snap. Offensive line right there. And then, obviously, Jones is running for his life, which makes him do things. Now, not the one, the off Barkley, the pick. That's not his fault. But well,
it's not the offensive line's fault either.
No, I understood. I'm saying, but the bad
But it was a big play. I'm just saying, yes, the offensive line sucked, but there were I could give you a million other reasons.
I agree, but to me, everything roots back to the offensive line because it prevents how deep you could go into the playbook, which makes you incredibly predictable. If you're predictable against this defense, it's crazy. DJ Reed last week saying about the Jets and the 85 Bears and the Legion of Boom. If the Jets defense is as good as Dallas's defense, I'll be stunned. That Dallas defense is sick.
Right.
I mean, everywhere. They are sick. And again, I'm not wasting anybody's time on a deep dive analytics to start the show. Forget about the studs. We know who they are in Dallas. Look at the secondary figures and the win rate that absolutely obliterated the Giants' offensive line. That O-line is awful.
Understood, but
if Thomas is compromised.
Daniel Jones missed open throws that you would hit.
Yeah, no, I
Jalen
understood.
Hyatt dropping a ball that I could catch.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. It's one thing after another. Barkley with the fun. Yes, the offensive line was awful, and I get the importance of that. You're also going up against one of the best defenses in the NFL, maybe, to your point, the best defense in the NFL. They will be okay, but the Giants last night absolutely did nothing. Brad is in Mineola. What's up, Brad?
So I felt like I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street last night. As a Giant fan, last night was horrendous to watch, and what I will say about the Giants is this. They're not as good as the Niners or Dallas or Philly, but what I will say is I agree with Sal. I do believe that we have enough in order to win 9 or 10 games, but we're not the cream of the crop like some of us thought they were, and I was a delusional Giant fan. I'll be completely frank with you. I do believe we'll have some good games. I believe the 40-0 was an aberration last night. But like you said, Brandon, if they lose to Arizona, that's a completely different situation. And it puts them years behind where they thought they were.
Correct. Yeah, and thanks for the call, Brad. I think that's the point. And look, I remember doing this live time, real time last year, saying the same thing, BT, as you're kind of saying now, where they weren't that good. They were playing above the expectations, playing above their head, but the results were there. You can't fake getting into the postseason. You can't fake winning a postseason road game. Of course, there are circumstances for it.
Yep.
But I don't think you could go from that to now going to a 5-6 win team. That would be... Then that's bad on Shane and Dable. They made improvements to be better. Not necessarily saying they would go further, meaning to a divisional round or to an end of... there's only 2 more rounds to possibly go further, NFC Championship or the Super Bowl. However, you've got to be better. And last night, they showed that they were worse. Long term, if they lose week 2, then this team is toast.
I always thought that, and this goes back to the summer when it was mostly a Jet summer, but when the Giants came up, obviously the Rodgers stuff hijacked everything. I really thought that record-wise, the Giants would take a step back, but organizationally, they would eventually take a step forward. There's no doubt. They've got the coach, they've got the GM. And now they've got to, eventually fill in a lot of holes. And by the way, we talk about their newfound speed. Let's pray Darren Waller's hamstring holds up this year. I mean, that's you didn't score a point with Darren Waller on the field.
Right.
I mean, God forbid if that hamstring, which plagued him a year ago, pops up again. It's just they are.
Their offense was supposed to take a next step.
But yes, I never thought their success this year would be linear. I'm still bullish on the direction of the franchise. I just didn't think that they would take the, that continuous step forward, that momentum that they had from last year. I thought there'd be a step back this year.
Brandon Tierney, Salicata on the Fan. More of your calls coming up on the other side. 877-337-6666.